Hello, and welcome to this Anatomy Physiology Bio 202 video lecture on the lymphatic system and immune response. I'm Mr. Kennedy, and I'll be your guide as we explore this topic together. To begin, I'd like to break down our body's nonspecific and adaptive immune responses. Nonspecific resistance, also known as innate immunity, is the body's ability to fight off foreign pathogens present at birth, and it includes defense mechanisms that provide general protection against invasion by a wide range of pathogens. Adaptive immunity involves an activation of specific lymphocytes that combat a particular pathogen or other foreign substance. The body system that carries out immune responses is your lymphatic system. The lymphatic system consists of several structures and organs that contain lymphatic tissue, bone marrow, and a fluid called lymph that flows within the lymphatic vessels. This is a diagram illustrating the general structure of your lymphatic system. The lymphatic system functions to drain interstitial fluid, transport dietary fats, and carry out immune responses. Lymphatic vessels begin as lymphatic capillaries, which are closed on one end. Lymphatic capillaries are located between cells of many tissues. Lymphatic capillaries merge to form lymphatic vessels, which have thin walls and many valves. This is a diagram illustrating the general structure of a lymphatic capillary. Note that it is closed at one end and drains interstitial fluids from the cells surrounding it. From the lymphatic vessel, lymph passes through lymph nodes and then into lymph trunks. Lymph trunks include the lumbar, intestinal, bronchomediastinal, subclavian, and jugular trunks. Lymph trunks then merge to form either the thoracic duct or the right lymphatic duct. This diagram illustrates the routes of drainage throughout the thorax. This diagram illustrates specifically the jugular trunks, subclavian trunks, the right lymphatic trunk, the right bronchomediastinal trunk, and their matched structures on the left side. The formation and flow of lymph. Lymph begins as interstitial fluid, which enters lymph capillaries, lymph vessels, lymph trunks, and then moves to lymph ducts and subclavian veins. This diagram illustrates the movement of interstitial fluid through those lymphatics. Lymph organs and tissues. Primary lymphatic organs are organs where immune cells become immunocompetent. They include the red bone marrow and the thymus. This is an illustration indicating the proper location of the thymus. Secondary lymphatic organs and tissues include lymph nodes, the spleen, and lymphatic nodules. This is the generalized structure of a lymph node. This is a microscopic view of a portion of the lymph node. And this is your spleen. Lymphatic nodules. Lymphatic nodules are masses of lymphatic tissue that are not surrounded by a capsule. They are scattered throughout the lamina propria of mucous membranes lining the gastrointestinal, urinary, and reproductive tracts and the respiratory airways. Lymphatic nodules in these areas are also referred to as mucosal-associated lymphatic tissue or MALT. Innate immunity. Innate immunity refers to a wide variety of body responses that serve to protect us against invasion of a wide variety of pathogens and their toxins. We are born with this kind of immunity. It's made of two specific lines of defense: skin and mucous membranes, and internal defenses. Skin and mucous membranes combine to provide both mechanical and chemical defenses. The skin, mucous membranes, tears, saliva, mucus, cilia, epiglottis, urine flow, defecation, and vomiting are considered mechanical defenses. Sebum, lysozyme, and gastric juice are considered chemical defenses. Internal defenses. Internal defenses include antimicrobial proteins, phagocytic cells, natural killer cells, inflammation, and elevated body temperature, or fever. Phagocytosis. This is a diagram of a white blood cell ingesting a foreign organism in the process known as phagocytosis. This is a diagram of a few of the steps leading to inflammation. Notice that there is a tissue injury and emigration, also known as diapedesis, is occurring as white blood cells move through chemotaxis to the wound and begin to engulf foreign microbes. This table provides a summary of our innate defenses, the components, and their functions. Adaptive immunity. Adaptive immunity is the ability of the body to defend itself against specific invading agents. Antigens are substances recognized as foreign that provoke immune responses. Adaptive immunity has both specificity and memory and is divided into two types: cell-mediated and antibody-mediated. This is an illustration of adaptive immunity. Note the cells and their roles within this process. Antigens and antigen receptors. Antigens and antigen receptors infer immunogenicity, reactivity, and they can be made up of entire microbes or just parts of microbes that might act as antigens. Typically, just certain parts of a large antigen molecule act as the triggers for immune responses. These small parts are called epitopes. For an immune response to occur, B cells and T cells must recognize that a foreign antigen is present. B cells can recognize and bind to antigens in lymph, interstitial fluid, or blood plasma. T cells only recognize fragments of antigenic proteins that are processed and presented in a certain way. In antigen processing, antigenic proteins are broken down into peptide fragments that associate with MHC molecules. The antigen MHC complex is then inserted into the plasma membrane of a body cell. This process is called antigen presentation. This is an illustration of exogenous antigen processing. And this is an illustration of endogenous antigen processing. Cytokines. Cytokines are small protein hormones that stimulate or inhibit many normal cell functions. The table seen below provides a summary of cytokines, their origins, and their functions in our immune response. Cell-mediated immunity. In cell-mediated immunity, an antigen is recognized and bound. A small number of T cells will proliferate and differentiate into a clone of effector cells, and then the antigen will be eliminated. This is an illustration of the activation and clonal selection of a helper T cell. This is the activation and clonal selection of a cytotoxic T cell. And this illustrates the activity of the cytotoxic T cell as the foreign pathogen is eradicated. Antibody-mediated immunity. In antibody-mediated immunity, an antigen is recognized and bound. Helper T cells co-stimulate the B cells so the B cells can proliferate and differentiate into a clone of effector cells that produce antibodies. The antigen will then be eliminated. This is an illustration of the activation and clonal selection of B cells. IgG antibody structure. This is a diagram illustrating the generalized structure of an antibody. Note the picture on the right, which designates the heavy chain, light chain, and variable regions within the antibody. This table provides you with a summary of the classes of immunoglobulins, or antibodies, and their characteristics and functions. Complement activation and results. This table illustrates the activation of complement proteins and the subsequent results achieved by doing so. Immunological memory. Your immune system does develop memory as it fights off foreign invaders. That memory is meant to lessen the future impact of a second infection of the same pathogen. Ways to acquire adaptive immunity are summarized in this table. There are 4 primary means of acquiring adaptive immunity: naturally acquired active immunity, naturally acquired passive immunity, and then artificially acquired and artificially acquired passive immunity. Self-recognition and self-tolerance. T cells undergo both positive and negative selections to ensure they can recognize self-MHC antigens and that they do not react to other self-proteins. This graphic illustrates the development of self-recognition and self-tolerance. B cells develop tolerance through deletion and anergy. This table further explores the process of B cells developing self-recognition and self-tolerance. And finally, this table, which summarizes the functions of cells participating in the adaptive immune response, the cell type listed at the left, and their function. This concludes our coverage of the lymphatic system and immunity.